Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Future of Film Showcase 2021 edition, hosted by CBC Gem. My name is Zachary Goldkind, and I'm the lead programmer of the festival. I'm very happy to be joined by Bruna Arbex for a small conversation about not only their film featured in our program this year, but their whole body of work. And ideally, we'll be able to dig a bit into the core of their artistic practices. Bruna, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on the festival. It's a pleasure. And yeah, I'm doing great. It has been definitely a good run with this film, and I'm happy that I am here now and we can talk more about it.
I'm very excited to move forward. So I guess before hopping into this is a period piece, I'd like to first ask about your relationship to other mediums. So much of your work is either documenting or collaborating with other artists whose work lives in other forms of expression, be it music, dance, etc. And so I'd like to get your own insights into the relationship mediums have to one another and your affinity towards them and that relationship.
Yeah, of course. So I have always worked with video production in some capacity, and film wise was more so when I moved to Vancouver like 5 years ago. And that's when I make the shift up through doing narratives. But before that, I didn't have like an education in film. So I learned through marketing school and things like that how to use the video asset for production. So that was an easier way to keep myself creating and doing my own projects by doing music videos, documentaries, because it requires a little bit less of a pre-production process. We don't have to write a script, for example, or get funding. You can kind of like get it going for almost no money. So that was kind of like the beginning of it all. And when I moved here, I got connected with some musicians and we did some collaborations, some passion projects, which helped kept me like producing things yearly instead of just relying on film. And I used to work on a company that we were trying to be a media channel, so we created a documentary series. And through those, I also end up actually connecting with a bunch of different artists besides doing things for that channel. And that just opened up like the realm of possibilities. And I like to have this variation to like sometimes jump on film, maybe do something related to it once a year, twice a year or so, but on the general basis, have this flow going with music videos and short documentaries, but especially music videos, because that speaks a lot to my creative style. I tend to go more to a surreal approach to narrative instead of so like story based. And music videos is like you can go as crazy as you want.
Mhm.
So it's definitely like where I want to land for most of the time. And then when I have the capacity of doing film, I rather do my own projects. So I save my energy for that or projects that I really believe in.
Oh, thank you for that. And I would like to actually then, I guess, it's good to then jump into, I guess, I'd like to inquire about your relationship with fiction. I know you produced this film as a part of the Crazy Eights filmmaking competition. Um, so I'd like to hear a bit about how the production was organized and how that setting of the Crazy Eights sort of allowed you to tell the story that you wanted to.
Yeah, it was very interesting because we knew right away when we were going with that story would be kind of a risk because it touches on a subject that I mean I don't consider sensitive, but a lot of people do. And we knew it would have like we would go through some barriers in terms of that, but it was a very interesting process that proved to myself that I have the capacity of pulling something as complex as what we did. And the process itself, actually, to be honest with you, in the beginning, I, despite of like the content of the story, I wasn't so sure if I was going to get it because that was actually my second short film. Everything else that I did was mainly on that realm that you said. So it was really good to prove to myself that I'm there on the game. Like I'm not behind anyone, not because I did last short films, but it made me feel more confident on jumping more often on fiction. That's for sure. And the process itself, it is a challenge because you have to move so fast. Like for those who don't know, we have to film everything in 3 days and do all the post production in five. And I think after you go through Crazy Eights with, you don't have a lot of budget, you have a lot of sponsorships, but when you don't have that many resources or time and you see like you can pull something like that off, it really makes you believe you can do almost anything. Like it gives you that push. And other than that, like the capacities of what you learn during the process, because you're very trained to how it would work in an industry throughout the pre-production month, it opens so much for opportunities after, because there's a whole gala that people watch it, you create amazing connections, you end up working on set with a lot of people too that you didn't know previously. So it was absolutely like the kickoff of my career.
And so I'm glad to hear that, and I'm curious to I guess know, to go immediately off of that. Uh, what kind of stories are you interested in telling? If this is the kickoff, where do you see yourself going, and how do you want to explore it?
Yeah, so this is a period piece. It's based on myself, on my experience when I got my first period. So that's kind of the line I want to go on, taking mundane examples of things that happened to me that don't seem very critical at a first look, but can show a lot about like someone's growth or like the challenges as we go as separate individuals. So I hope to, with my filmmaking, to narrate things that happen to me, but with that surreal look. Like I get a fact and then I completely exaggerate it to a surreal universe. That's like how I want to keep going. That being more drama or comedy or like that place in between, which I think the Zipper piece is. It's where I want to land, and pushing sometimes even more to the uncomfortable side. I like to be a little bit more challenging moving forward with that, like creating an uncomfortable feeling and pushing more boundaries. But yeah, like being a woman, Latina, queer person, that those are the realms that I'm trying to explore. So moving forward, I can see myself doing more things in relation to more mature years of my life than that one that was like when I was 11, when that happened to me. So I'm hoping to kind of move on that line of like experience I was going through until this point that I am now, and create some sort of narrative around that, but always with this surreal look and intent to it.
Of course, no, and because I mean, this is a period piece. I think you do really well and purposefully balance the sort of of the absurdist comedy elements with, I guess, the dramatic core of the relationship between herself, and sort of acknowledging the growth she's going through, especially understanding how to even confront that with the men in her family who either ostracize her in like sort of microaggressive ways, but specifically the relationship with her father that you end with. That's really quite the poignant sort of final touch. And I'm curious in terms of where your, I guess, your love and desire to create for surrealism came from. Because I mean, surrealism sort of has this way of, accentuating our lives and trying to find ways to express what can only be expressed through like this visual contortion. So I'm curious to know where that came from.
Yeah, I think the first time that it hit me was early on school when I started learning about art history, like even before like university and high school. And I could see how much surrealism and Dadaism and like Cubism would speak to me more than more literal art. And as I was growing up, I kind of figured that like it's not so easy for me to express myself emotionally through simply talking or simply trying to explain myself. I just have this crazy visuals that in my mind represents better what I'm going through than simply just trying to explain it. And I got really attached with this idea of like, oh, I just wish people could see inside of my brain for a second, like when I'm thinking about something or going through something, just having like those crazy out of reality dreams or interpretations of things. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of funny, that's kind of entertaining. So it's basically, yeah, the core of it is me trying to express myself in a more visual way and creating a scene with realism that kind of embraces all those feelings. In fact, instead of saying like I am angry, or I am uncomfortable. So that it's, yeah, it's a form of expression itself, But I can't deny too that I have like huge influence through films I watched growing up, like being John Malkovich, a lot of like those completely surreal interpretations of a simple narrative that always kept my attention more than anything else, because I think the fact that you can't really understand unless you think about it, it's huge for me. You like really have to pay attention, like an art piece when you see someone in a museum or whatever, right? Like you're looking at it and you're trying to understand how that makes sense to you. So I think by doing that, I'm also opening the space for the viewer to create their own interpretation of what that message is for them.
And I definitely think you offer that space, because something that the committee was talking about while we were talking over your work is how, yeah, this could be a film that would easily lend itself to sort of the immediate comedy that the absurdity and the surrealism sort of perhaps often grafts itself to, but you do take your time to sort of try to situate our perspective in the perspective of your protagonist, who is really unsure about what's happening around her. And I think the way that you position us allows the film to actually find those moments of sort of like emotional resonance. And we all at FOFS think it's just a really impressive way to maneuver all of these different aesthetic decisions, while keeping firm control of them as well. And I guess I'd also like to speak about the way that collaboration comes into your work. Through some of your docs that I was watching, I saw one about on kink and BDSM, one that was profiling a more eccentric individual and sort of their trek to find comfort with themselves and their ways of being. And your camera is always very, I guess, generous is the word, to allow these subjects to really own their own space, own themselves. And I think there's certainly a moral upstanding there in terms of how you're being very cooperative and very open with the subjects. So I'm curious to how that sort of attitude transitions into your filmmaking, your fiction filmmaking.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I do tend to, when I'm doing documentary, I like to talk to the subjects months prior to any filming and keep conversations going. So we create some sort of intimacy before like going to camera, and we create a level of trust. And with film, I like to do that too with people that I cast. Like I like to, especially the main actor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the main actress in that film, Maitreya. Like we met up a few times before just to discuss that same period of our lives, like how it was for her. I wanted to know, like, how did you feel? Can you relate to anything I'm trying to say here? How do you put your emotional reaction to those situations? I don't want to just inflict on you what I felt. Like I want you to put part of yourself too. So I really like to do, that's definitely something I take from documentary, is understanding who the actor is as a person, not only as who the character they're going to play, but see how we can create a merge of their personality with the character they're trying to portray. Because I rather have a very believable performance than the ideal performance in my brain. Like I don't like to just put it in a box what I want a character to be, and have them do the creative work too of how we can interpret those emotions and be playful with that. So that's one thing. And another thing is the camera work for sure, because we did that. The period piece is entirely handheld. We didn't use tripods for any moments. And I like to work, which I do similar on documentary, that we kind of do like a general blocking and a rehearsal. And we try to follow the actors. Like I don't like to mark them where they're supposed to go. We kind of like that, let them run, and then we kind of move around, try to do a lighting just like around the set so we don't have to adjust anything. And we try to move around and do a couple of runs, see like, oh yeah, that feels nice, we can really get that shot, so we're going to do a coverage there. So I play more on set than actually creating definitely like a stable shot list. I have my general idea of what I need to get, but this experience for documentary of being quick on your feet and learning how to move around subjects and give emotion with camera through those movements, it's definitely something that like I want to carry for my films too.
No, I mean that sounds. I'm fascinated by it, and I'd be curious to, you know, if you could elaborate sort of like how the rest of the crew sort of fit into that process of more like improvisation, and just seeing sort of how the whole team comes together within a space that's more, I guess, intuitive.
I think it's really key to work with a DP that does the same. If I worked with my DP, we had several discussions before and several meetings before that we would kind of like explain how we see and key moments, like when the character says this, we need a really close up, a really good close up, or when this happens, we need to be far away. So we have those landmarks, and if it's a DP that is comfortable working with that, it's ideal, because if it's someone that it's not that used to that style, it's a bit complicated because you can change someone's style and approach to something too, right? So that was previously discussed with everyone. Our first AD2 knew that we kind of wrote like we need 4 shots here, kind of as a general mark, but everybody was perfectly aware and everything was fully discussed. Was like wasn't so much of a complete improvisation, if you know what I mean. Like was we had an idea of what we needed, like when we needed a camera to move to go to each character, like, oh, we're someone is talking here, hold here, and then move to this person. We knew all of that. It's just the point itself on set that it changes a bit. So in resume, yeah, working with someone that kind of have a similar style to you, it's definitely the most important thing to me.
No, and I imagine from sort of transitioning towards your next narrative project, coming from a space that was, you know, more self-organized, contained as well, so, you know, forcing you into a sort of structure, and like I'm, you know, I imagine then going out of that structure and trying to sort of, I guess, create your own, really, to create a new space for yourself and your collaborators to make work. I'd be curious to hear sort of like how you see yourself now making new work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I really like to focus on creating a good network of people that I know, and every now and then collaborating with new people, because it's always great to expand that. But kind of knowing a group of individuals that it's willing to be more sensitive to what happens on set, and and have less of like a really formal structure. I like having that flexibility. So if I don't have anything or reviewing my project, let's say it's completely independent, I really like to have that freedom of figuring things out as we feel the situation, as it makes sense. Be open to ideas. Some people, I really don't mind people that are working with me jumping with ideas on set, because we want to, maybe someone is seeing something the rest is not, and if you have the time, why not, you know. And I really like this environment that everybody thinks they are also creating instead of just listening to me
Hmm.
giving direction. So that's a big one. And one thing I do want to experiment too, I'm possibly filming another short film by the end of summer, and I'm thinking, because it's supposed to be very jarring and surreal too, more than this is a period piece, to experimenting with non-actors and just let them try to be awkward because it's supposed to feel weird and try to, you know, break the barriers a little bit, and be more adventurous on challenging the formats of film, I guess.
No, that sounds excellent. And just a final question before we go. I this, you know, spoiler to anyone who is currently watching who hasn't seen the film yet. I would recommend you go. It's, you know, currently streaming on CBC. This is a period piece, but I am curious about your decision to break the wall so, you know, so forcefully come your final moment. You know, through the film, it's a very enveloped sense of diegesis. It's all incredibly confined to her perspective, and so for suddenly that perspective to break towards us, it's a jarring move, and I'd be curious to hear why you did it.
So before we went to film, I had this bigger idea, so I would need more pages to explain that, and we couldn't really do with the Crazy Eights format. But initially, the whole like key to the whole story would be the camera. It's actually her mom, because we don't see the mom in the entire film. And I was kind of like, all the stories started to with me watching tapes of me growing up, and my mom was always filming. We never see her on camera, and my dad is near me. So I kind of put it together, the idea of like, if you don't have a female example of what to do when you get your period, um, you're just growing up with a dad, you lack that perspective of what to do. Like you feel a little bit lost. You don't have that advice. So it was kind of like mimicking the idea of a mom that passed away and that was the camera following and watching over her. And in the end, if I had that time to make that clarification, would be more a talking to camera than just like breaking the fourth wall and pushing it. But I didn't want to lose that aspect completely. So the whole handheld aspect of the camera, what we translated to essentially was the audience is the last standing piece still watching her. So she ran away from the media, from cameras. It's a private moment. Like all the other things are past. There is no like reporters following her anymore. We are the only ones who still watching a private moment. So it's kind of like, okay, you had enough. So it was more in that sense, like the camera's so alive that we're like, yeah, I think we can still keep that uh kind of idea of a camera being a character itself,
Mhm.
even though it's not that clear. By the end, just showing that. So it was a bit of that playing with like all the cameras watching, and you're on TV, and you're all of that, and it's a final response to people.
Okay, no, thank you for it. It's definitely a very fascinating origin, and I guess I look very much forward to seeing, when you do have the chance to expand your horizons, what that becomes. So that'll be exciting. But Bruna, thank you so much for joining us today, and I I hope everyone goes to check out your film. This is a period piece. It's now playing, like I said, on CBC Gem. Thank you so much, Bruna.
Yeah, of course, and I hope everybody go check it out too. And yeah, it was a pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine. All mine. Thank you so much.